Hey everybody, have you considered starting a podcast? We here at Screwball highly recommend Podbean for getting your podcast out to a larger audience. Podbean has given us the ability to easily bring you Screwball each and every week on all of your favorite podcast services. Use the link podbean.com/screwball to sign up and save up to 35% annually. You can also use the link podbean.com/pro/screwball to sign up for a business subscription. Happy podcasting. Hey everybody, welcome back to Screwball, a baseball podcast, your home for everything baseball. I'm your host Mike Lepre here with my co-host Frank White.
Hey, how's it going?
So we continue on with the NL in our prediction series here. Last week was the NL East. In this episode, we're going to get into the NL Central. A pretty unique division, all things considered. I think that this will be an interesting talk for sure. You know, the NL East was a good talk, and I think that this division is. I don't think it's quite as competitive as the NL East, in my opinion, but I think that predictions are kind of all over the place for this division. Even me and Frank kind of disagreed on two teams here, so it's exciting to get into it. So let's just jump in with the first team here that we kind of, as you know, traditionally do here on the predictions. We jump in with the team that we think is the least talented team in the division, and as no surprise to a lot of people, that's the Pirates. So the Pirates, to get into it, their projected lineup is Adam Frazier, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Colin Moran, Brian Reynolds, Gregory Polanco, Anthony Alford, Jacob Stallings, and Kevin Newman, and then the pitching spot at 9. And then for the rotation, we have Steven Brault, Chad Kuhl, Tyler Anderson, Mitch Keller, and Jonathan Brubaker. So, you know, just to start off here, let me start off with the rotation because I think that there's a big, I think, problem there, really. I mean, you got young guys like Mitch Keller that they're supposed to be pretty good, and I think they're going to come up and do pretty good. But, you know, for the most part, there's really no names in that rotation. Your number one guy, that they project, Steven Brault, is not a name of any kind. So unless you're a Pirates fan or a serious baseball fan, that's not going to really do anything for you. And, you know, not to say that these guys aren't talented. It's just, the Pirates are, you know, in the offseason, they were trading away people, guys like Josh Bell. So they kind of gave away a lot of star power, and they're kind of setting their rebuild up here. And as you know, Frank will get into in a little bit with the prospects, they do have a pretty good prospect pool. So, you know, I talked about the rotation, and then, you know, the lineup I think is in better shape than the rotation. You know, got young guys like Ke'Bryan Hayes, Adam Frazier, you know, Brian Reynolds. These guys are good hitters, and Ke'Bryan Hayes is supposed to be one of their higher end prospects, so he's going to do pretty well for them, I think. So the top end of the lineup, rounding out kind of with Gregory Polanco, you know, the top end of the lineup is okay. You know, it's competitive. It's whatever. You know, there's some names there, especially if you're a Pirates fan. You could definitely get excited about guys like Ke'Bryan Hayes, and I think Colin Moran is a fan favorite over there. As you kind of fall down, you know, the lineup here with Anthony Alford and Jacob Stallings and Kevin Newman, you got guys on the bench like Todd Frazier, Phillip Evans, Tony Walters. There's no real like excitement there as far as like a team that's ready to go get a wild card or even make any sort of push for the division. So the team to me is kind of, you know, stereotypical team that we've talked about in the 5 spot here, or is probably going to be in the 5 spot in the division. They're kind of getting their pieces together and they're rebuilding and they're getting ready for a run at some point. But obviously that year is not 2021. So nor do any of the Pirates fans or baseball people expect the Pirates to be really that competitive. So there's no surprise here. And just real quick before I throw it over to you, the bullpen's really not. I mean, there's some names like Trevor Cahill, Chasen Shreve, these guys that just kind of fill in, but nothing really intimidating out of the bullpen. I mean, they have Richard Rodriguez as the projected closer. You know, I'm not even really familiar with his work, you know, out of the bullpen. So I can't really even say much about him, but so yeah, I mean, the Pirates maybe, you know, I think they're a little better than maybe like a 100 loss team. I think they'll probably get above that hump, although some projections have them down that far. I mean, we'll see. That, you know, this division isn't super competitive. There are going to be some middling teams here that we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about the Pirates. I don't know how you're feeling about this, you know, this Pirates team.
Yeah, I mean the Pirates probably have the worst team in baseball. I mean that's pretty much how it is. You know they got some guys like you mentioned, Mitch Keller, who's a pretty good young pitcher, Chad Kuhl, not bad, Sean Brault, Trevor Cahill, Tyler Anderson, Miguel Yajori,
Mm.
Yajori,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Stratton. So there's some guys there. I mean, Keller and Cool, not bad. Kale, we kind of know. Tyler Anderson, we kind of know. Chris Stratton. Then you go into some guys in the bullpen: Kyle Crick, Nick Mears,
Mm.
Luis Avidio, Sean Poppin. I mean, who?
Yeah.
There's just nothing. Starting pitching
Yeah.
wise, like I said, there's a couple guys there. All right, bullpen, there's just really nothing. We have a couple young guys that you never really know, but nothing as of yet. Sort of pitching's just not great. And then you go into the lineup: Jacob Stallings, Michael Perez, Colin Moran, Adam Frazier, Kevin Newman, Cole Tucker, Brian Hayes, which we mentioned. So I mean, out of those guys there, Colin Moran's not bad. He's got some power. Adam Frazier's an average guy usually. His average is usually pretty high. Kevin Newman is a pretty good hitter. He's usually around 300. Cole Tucker is a young prospect. He's supposed to be pretty good. Brian Hayes is supposed to be a stud. So your infield's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
With a couple names there, but there's no real superstars yet. But they're okay. Then you go into some outfields like Phillip Evans, Brian Reynolds, who's supposed to be really good. He's played very well. His average is always up over 300. He's probably their best hitter. You got Jared Olivia, Gregory Polanco, Anthony Alford. I mean, these guys. I mean, Polanco was a high prospect guy for a while, but he gets some injuries, and he's had some injuries in the past, and he never really turned out to be the player he's supposed to be. So I mean, their outfield's okay. Like I said, Brian Reynolds is a very good player for them. So like you said, their lineup's got some names that aren't bad.
Mm-hmm.
Their lineup's okay. They can hit a little bit, not a bunch of power, but it's just they're just okay at a bunch of positions. So like you said, I mean, their lineup's got some names in it. They're not completely just empty in the lineup, like kind of like they're pitching, but there's just not enough there to
Yeah.
really to do anything. They got some pieces they can trade away if they want, but they got some young players: Newman, Frazier, Cole Tucker, obviously Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, so they can keep around for a while. But they got a long ways to go to really compete in any division, really. But to go into some of their prospects, which is pretty much that's what you want to talk about the Pirates at this point. I mean, they got second baseman Nick Gonzalez. Obviously, Brian Hayes is supposed to be a very, very, very good player. And then you got shortstop O'Neal Cruz, who's supposed to be really good. He's an exciting young player for the Pirates. One
Yep.
big thing about him, oddly enough, is he's 6'7".
Yeah. That's nice.
6'7" shortstop. So he's an exciting guy that the Pirates fans and people around baseball are excited to see, as well as Brian Hayes. And then another one is pitcher Quinn Priester.
Okay.
And he's just, obviously just a young pitcher. So they got a good spread here. A couple infielders. Really, the whole infield: second base, third base, shortstop, and then a pitcher. So their farm system's not bad. It's not as good as you would want it to be if you're like a team like this. But they're definitely somewhere in just outside the top 10, I'd say. 11 to 15, somewhere in that range. But the team is bad. I mean, that's how it is. If you want to break it down, the team is not great. And their best thing is they have a couple of pieces that they could trade away, and they have a couple of young players in the majors. That's pretty much what you're looking at if you're a Pirates fan.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's no surprise here with with this team. You would think that a team this bad would have a better prospect pool than that. You would hope that, and you would like for them to be like a top 5, top 6 farm system if they're at that point. But maybe they're building there, and maybe over the next few years, as guys start to develop, they come up a little bit. But this division seems to kind of be a little open for them to get better. So that's good news for them, is they're not just going to get beaten down like they would be in the NL East or a division like that. So give them time to develop, and I'm sure they'll get better.
Yeah. I mean, they get a season here where they get a good draft pick. They'll be obviously they'll be at the top of the draft boards. So a trader here or there, and then a good couple good draft picks early in the rounds. I mean, they can turn the farm system around for the most part. But like I said, they're not awful. Their farm system's okay, but they have a couple young guys, so they're probably the lowest team in baseball talent wise, and they're probably the farthest farthest rebuilding team away from contention, just because their farm system's not that set up compared to the Tigers or the Royals or someone like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's not like a farm system that's like, all right, we're just about ready here. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
we'll
why I
see
see
what
the
happens though.
Pirates maybe 3 to 4 years compared to 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, which isn't bad. If you do end up being good, it's worth the wait. So we'll see what happens with them. The next team that we're going to talk about here is the Cubs, which might be a little surprising to people because I've seen projections where the Cubs win the division, which I mean I've seen crazy projections for this division, so it doesn't surprise me all that much. But to get into them, their lineup consists of Ian Happ, Wilson Contreras, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Jock Peterson, Javier Baez, Jason Hayward, Nico Horner, and then the pitching spot. The rotation consists of Kyle Hendricks, Jake Arrieta, Zach Davies, Alec Mills, and Trevor Williams. Now I had this team a little higher than Frank did. My only a big concern I have here is they kind of made some signals with the Darvish trade that they might be looking to not necessarily rebuild, but they might be looking to start selling. I could see it. You've got a lot of pieces here that people would want. I believe Anthony Rizzo not too long ago came out and said he wanted to be a Cub. He wanted to be here. So maybe he's just, if they do decide to go that route, maybe he's the guy that stays around. But I don't know where. That's my only concern here is where do they go? Could it be trade deadline time and they're not doing great? They're maybe hovering around or below 500, and they say, F it. We're getting some good offers on these guys. Let's pull the trigger. But overall, I still do think that the lineup's good. Guys like I think Ian Happ's a little underrated. He's a good switch hitter. Wilson Contreras is a mid to high end catcher. He's a good hitting catcher. Anthony Rizzo is again a mid to high first baseman in the league. I think he's good. Good Cub. He's a good clubhouse guy. A lot of fans like him. I'm sure his teammates love him. Chris Bryant has had some for what Chris Bryant should and could be. I don't think he's lived up to that quite as a career standpoint yet. Believe me, he's had his seasons and his moments, but it's looking a little weird for Chris Bryant right now. Jock Peterson was an interesting pickup. He's hitting the hell out of the ball in the spring. Will that translate? Not to the extent that he's hitting. I mean, I'm sure he'll be fine, but they're expecting him maybe to be a better replacement to Schwarber, I would assume. Javier Baez, people love Javier Baez. He's loved by the Cubs. He's a big fan, favorite guy. He's big around baseball. So, you kind of get, what you're getting out of him. Jason Hayward at this point, kind of what you're getting out of him. Nico Horner fills out kind of the middle infield there with Javier Baez. He's okay. Nothing really to write home about there compared to at least to the other guys in the lineup. And then you got the pitching spot, so whoever fills out that side. But then the rotation, I think that the problems get kind of bad here. You got Kyle Hendricks is your ace. I mean, he's okay. He'll give you like a 3-something ERA probably by the end of the year. Jake Arrieta, at this point, what do you get out of him? Is he really going to be a number 2, or is he going to have like a 6 ERA? Zach Davies will be okay, but he's your 2-3 guy. It's not the most ideal situation. Alec Mills, I mean, again, he's good. I think as a 4 guy, he's pretty good, so you might be all right there. And Trevor Williams, I think, is actually pretty good, especially for a 5 guy. I think that actually he could even maybe slot up a little bit. So overall, the lineup and the rotation, the lineup's definitely better. The rotation's, you see what you get out of Arrieta. If Arrieta decides to be pretty good, you're looking at a lot better rotation. Then out of the bullpen, you got, Craig Kimbrell. What do you get out of him? I mean, can he go back to being Craig Kimbrell? Can he be the guy? Can he if he goes back to doing that, then boy, you got a good closer. And then behind him, you got Andrew Chafin, Ryan Tepera, Rowan Wick, these guys that kind of are good, not great. They fill roles and they have solid ERAs and strikeout rates, but they're not the most intimidating guys out of the bullpen. They're not gonna shut guys down like Zach Britton for the Yankees or Brad Hand for the Nationals or something like that. You're not gonna get that. So. And then, you got a little bit of depth. I think that they actually do benefit from depth on the bench. They have guys like David Bodie, who seems to play just about everywhere. Jake Marisnick's a good backup outfielder. Also, Romine, I think, is a great backup catcher for Contreras. Cameron Maben is going to fit in great over there. He's another backup outfielder they have an option for. So I think the depth is on their side. I think they do have good depth, and I think that overall their offense could potentially be very, very good, one of the best in the division here. But I think that this is kind of a similar situation we talked about, in the NL East, particularly with, I mentioned it with the Nationals, the question marks you got. I think this team is full of question marks, and if things go well, which, like I said, I kind of have them a little bit more optimistic up my division rankings than Frank does. If things go right, they're going to be good. They're going to be the Cubs, and I don't think they're going to set the world on fire. Maybe looking at a wild card spot, but there's a lot of question marks, and kind of where we have them here, they could fall to 4. That's so that wouldn't surprise me at all. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline, but what are you kind of thinking here with the Cubs? I mean, they're a little all over the place for me,
Yeah, the Cubs. I mean, they still have talent in some spots, but there's just not. There's no real strength to the team or consistency to this team, which has really been their problem. Kyle Hendricks had a couple of good years. He had a down year in between there. He's your ace. Obviously not kind of the guy you'd want to be your ace. Zach Davies, okay. Alec Mills, I think we've seen him. What did he throw no hitter?
Yep.
Arrieta, you're not trying to catch lightning in a bottle twice with him. Trevor Williams is supposed to be pretty good, but he's had some injuries in his short career. You got a young guy, Braylon Marquez. They got a lot of hope for him.
Mm-hmm.
Then the bullpen, Craig Kimbrell, Brandon Workman, Brad Wick, Dan Winker, Ryan Tepera, Andrew Chafin, Jonathan Holder, Rex Brothers. These are all journeyman guys for the most part. I think Kimbrell and Workman. So their pitching staff overall is okay. Bullpen's okay with Kimbrell and Workman. Rotation's really okay, unless Trevor Williams really pitches well. Arrieta snaps back, and this Marquez guy can steps up. Otherwise, their pitching's only okay, which is something obviously every team needs pretty good pitching, but their pitching's only okay. And then you get to their lineup with Wilson Contreras, Andrew Romine, or I should say Austin Romine, Rizzo, David Bodie, Chris Bryant, Nico Horner, Baez. So your infield, Contreras really hasn't lived up to what he's supposed to be. Defensively, he's pretty good. Obviously, offensively, he's just not consistent at all. Last year, he struggled. I believe it was last year, he struggled a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Rizzo, he's a good player. I think people go a little too crazy with his offense. Reality, he's a 260 hitter on offense, somewhere in there. Maybe 30 home runs. So, not really an MVP type like some people kind of talk him up. Defensively, he's really good, but still one of the better first basemen. David Bodie, you don't really know what he's going to do in a full year if he plays, for the most, majority of the year. Chris Bryant hasn't really, other than winning a World Series with them, has been a major letdown for the Cubs.
Yep.
That's just how it is. If they didn't win a World Series, he would be a complete bust.
Agreed.
So, and there's already trade talks around him for pretty much a year now. So we'll see if he hangs around. I would say the jury's out for him, this year for sure. When you come to Nico Horner, what are you getting out of him? He's just, your stereotypical fill-in shortstop at this point.
Yeah.
Javier Baez was terrible last year, batted about 200. He's got to play better. So there's a lot of guys here who need to play better. Otherwise, their offense, which is probably their strength, is not going to play well.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to the outfield, Jock Peterson, who batting 550 right now. That's not sustainable by anybody, but especially Jock Peterson, who's probably a 250 hitter at his best.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ian Happ, he kind of played all right. He's another one who was kind of a high prospect and he hasn't really lived up to that completely yet. Cameron Maybin's a good pickup. He played very well in the last couple of years. Jason Hayward's played actually. Jason Hayward was their best offensive player last year. So that kind of tells you where they're at offensively with some of these names. That Jason Hayward was your best offensive player, and you kind of understand why this team, for me at least, have them down towards the bottom, because you just don't. There's no consistency or any fluid, motion. This offense.
Yep.
And then you have a guy like Jake Marisnick, who's a good backup outfielder as well. So, offensively, there's some names there. Pitching wise, they're okay. They're probably in the middle of the pack in the NL, maybe pitching wise. Offense, they could be pretty good. They could be a top 5 NL offense, but they could be is always the issue. But they never actually live up to that.
Mm.
So that's why I have them so low. It's just not consistency, and you just don't know what they're going to do. To go into their prospects, you can look at, like I said, pitcher Braylon Marquez, who's supposed to be really, he could be pretty good. Outfielder Brennan Davis, catcher Miguel Amaya,
Mm.
shortstop Ed Howard. So I mean, their prospects are okay. You know, nothing crazy. Definitely in the teens somewhere, maybe in the late teens. And the team really is okay. Offensively, they can be pretty good offensively, but overall, if you look at the team, it's really just if you go by some numbers and look at them, they're just okay.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
think they're gonna be more towards the bottom of the division, especially if they get off to a bad start and then they look to trade some guys away.
Yeah. Like I said, I went into it before I threw it over to you. This just teams just I don't know where they're going to place. There's three teams in this division. I just didn't know where to place them. I kind of threw them, especially this next team. I really don't know where to throw them. So we'll see. The Cubs very happy they got their World Series. Really well deserved. Me and you were everyone in baseball should have been rooting for them. But at this point, I mean, the window's got to be just about shut here for them. So I just don't see a wild card berth for them either. With some of the talent in the East and the West, it's just, especially this division, it's just there's a lot of just kind of middle of the pack teams. It just is what it is. So, and I think they fall right into that category. They fall right in. So let's just move on here to the next team that we think is the most talented is the Brewers. Now the Brewers, this may even be controversial. I've seen the Brewers in 3 different projections now as the winner of this division, and I don't know where that comes from. I see kind of maybe because this division is so wide open, maybe people just want to make a wild call here, and I don't know what the deal is. So just to get into it, the lineup consists of Colton Wong, Lorenzo Kane, Christian Yelich, Keston Hiura, if I'm saying that right, Travis Shaw, Jackie Bradley Jr., Orlando Arcia, Omar Narvaez, and the pitching spot. The rotation consists of Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, Josh Lindblom, Adrian Hauser, and Brett Anderson. I mean, just I'll start with the rotation. I mean, the starting rotation, Brandon Woodruff is good. I will give him that. After that, Corbin Burns, Josh Lindblom, Adrian Hauser, Brett Anderson. There's not much really to chew on there. There's not much that I think is really going to, say this team were to make a playoff push. There's not enough that really excites me. I think Brandon Woodruff's just about all you got here. I think they think pretty highly of Corbin Burns, but that there's a big problem there. I think in the rotation. But with the lineup, I think the lineup's okay. I think Colton Wong was a fantastic pickup for them. I like Colton Wong. Lorenzo Kane, I believe he was off last year, so what do you get out of him? He was already kind of regressing, so I don't know. Christian Yelich had a rough year last year, even though he is, I would think, one of the better hitters in the league. So I would assume he'd get back to his, a better average and home run rate here. So you think you're going to be better with him. Keston Hiura is going to be good. I'm pretty sure he had an all right year last year. They got him slated as the cleanup hitter here, so I think they think pretty highly of him. Travis Shaw, I always kind of liked. I think that he's a little underrated. I think that he's going to be okay filling up kind of the middle of the lineup there. Jackie Bradley Jr. just couldn't seem to find a home. He wanted an exorbitant amount of money in his contract, if I remember correctly, hearing rumors, and he finally settled with the Brewers. I never really thought all that highly of Jackie Bradley Jr. Good defensive guy, and maybe you get a good average out of him, but maybe he makes up for what they think might be some lost ground and speed in Lorenzo Kane, kind of taking a year off, getting a year older. Orlando Arcia, I think, is good. Down towards the end of the lineup here, I think he's going to do okay for them. Maybe have a good average. And Omar Narvaez for a catching spot, I think, is outstandingly underrated. I think I can't say enough good things about that guy. I think he hits well and he defends well, and if he's your 8 hitter, I mean that's not a bad problem to have. That's a pretty good catcher right there. I think I think that a lot of their strength maybe even comes to their bullpen. Josh Hader as a closer, he's been surrounded in trade talks, I know, for a bit here, but I mean he's super talented. Brent Suter, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, he's pretty damn good. Not shut down quite like Devin Williams, who they have right behind him. Devin Williams was absolutely lights out last year. So if you get that out of him, I mean, man, you've got a sick back end of the bullpen. I don't think he'll quite put up numbers like he did. That's pretty hard to sustain. But if he can at least be like a 2 ERA guy out of the bullpen, you got a lot to like there. Freddie Peralta in the bullpen, these guys that, then as you start going up the bullpen, these guys that are okay. And then off the bench, you got guys like Luis Urias, Avisail Garcia, Daniel Robertson. So not a tremendous amount of depth. I think you like your talent in the outfield overall. Yeah, it's hard for me to peg this team. I mean, like I said, the lineup's okay. I think the lineup is good. I will give them that. Rotation's rough. Bullpen, I think, is good. I think the bullpen's definitely the strength of your pitching because they're going to be needed a lot. So I think that if they do make a playoff push by playoff time, that bullpen you could see might be burned out. I really wouldn't be surprised. I don't see a lot of inning eaters out of the rotation. So I kind of got them as the third best team here because I just don't know where else to put them. And I think that just like how we talked about with the Cubs, they're just going to be a kind of a meddling team. I wouldn't be surprised if they just fell right around 500. So I know people really think highly of them. I can't quite understand it, but I don't know. How are you kind of thinking with the Brewers here, where you got them kind of placed?
Yeah, the Brewers, I think we both got them pretty much here in the 3 slot. I mean, to give them just a quick breakdown of them is they don't have pitching, and offensively, they're okay. You want to dive into it. Brandon Woodruff could be an ace. He's pitched very well. Corbin Burns has potential to be pretty good. Adrian Hauser, Josh Lindblom, Eric Lauer, the guy supposed to be relatively good. Brett Anderson, you're also going to have out there. So, starting pitching wise, really other than Woodruff, the possibility of Burns, and then what you think Eric Lauer can be, not that great. You got your ace, and that's pretty much it. A lot of question marks behind him, behind Woodruff. You go into the bullpen, which you said is probably their strength. You got Josh Hader, who's been, used a lot last couple of years, and he's in trade talks. You got Suter, who's been relatively good out of the bullpen. Devin Williams, who rookie year was fantastic, but again, rookie year, shortened year, can he repeat that? Or not really repeat that because that'd be, it's incredible if he could repeat it, but can he, be close to that going into his sophomore year? Then you have Ray Black, Freddie Peralta. So the bullpen is definitely a strength compared to for their pitching staff. But still questions there with Hader being used, being traded, possibly being traded, and Devin Williams being a rookie. If Devin Williams regresses, maybe to like a 3-something ERA, then your bullpen isn't as strong as you thought it was. So their pitching staff, especially their starting pitchers, is not that great. Their bullpen's not bad, but they definitely need some help pitching, especially in that division where the ballparks are relatively small and their own ballpark is relatively small. You go into their lineup, Omar Narvaez. I had him in fantasy that 1 year. He was fantastic. It was 2 years ago. Last year he struggled, but he should be okay. He's relatively, he's a pretty good catcher. If not, they have Manny Pena, who's also been there for a little while, so he's not bad. Then you get into Keston Herrera. He was a top prospect. He's been pretty good since they called him up, I guess, 2 years ago. Daniel Vogelbach, he just crushes the ball. He, bats about 200, but, got great power.
Yep.
Colt Wong, he's defensively one of the best second basemen in baseball. Offensively, he's come around. He's really, grown to be a pretty good offensive second baseman. Then you have, I believe, former top prospect Luis Urias.
Yeah.
If he could become close to what they think he was supposed to be, I mean, that would really be a big help to them. Then you got Jace Peterson. It's a good backup. He's just it's a solid backup infielder. Is exactly what you want. Orlando Arcia, who's been played pretty well for the Brewers so far. So I mean, their infield's not bad. A couple names there, but nothing to write home about.
Yeah.
Then you go into their outfield, which is what their strength is. You go into Yelich. Look at the year they made the playoffs. Yelich had to win MVP. So if Yelich doesn't win MVP, they don't play. They're not that great.
Yeah, agreed.
So Yelich obviously is MVP candidate pretty much every year, but he's got to play pretty much win MVP to be in the playoffs, and that's kind of how this team again is rounding out to be. You got Lorenzo Kane, who 2 years ago was hurt, didn't play well. Last year didn't play at all. So what are you getting out of him? Jackie Bradley Jr. He's a 200 hitter if you're lucky. Defensively, he's very good defensively by the stats, but offensively, he's really not that great. I mean, last year in a shortened season, he hit pretty well, but for the most part, he's a really probably 2 to 230 hitter. And also now you're taking him out of Fenway, so what's that do to his stats? And then probably their top 3 offensive players on this whole team that no one wants to ever talk about as Viola Garcia. He's always 280, 290, 300. 20 home runs, some stolen bases, relatively good defense. He's one of their better players, and every team he's been on, they never really talk about him. I remember when he came up with Detroit, he was Little Miggy.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They called him. So he's a very good player. So I like him a lot. And then backup Tyrone Taylor. So our outfield is definitely the strength of their team. But offensively, they're okay. With Yelich, with Garcia, with Wong, Castiano, whatever Kane could give you, whatever, Jackie Bradley can give you. If Luis Urias can, become a player that you expect him to be, your offense is definitely going to be the strength of your team, but it's not really jumping off the page for you. And with your starting pitching not being good, and your bullpen being relatively good, you definitely need to have a more consistent, stronger offense, and I just don't see that out of the Brewers.
Sure.
So, and like you said, with Craig Counsell, who's done a great job there, you got to have a lot of pitchers and a lot of arms to be able to last the whole year, and they just don't have that. So you're going to be beating up these bullpen guys all the time because they're starters. You're only going to let them go 3, 4, 5 innings. So there's some talent here, but I just don't see. I can't see them being more than maybe 500, maybe competing for a wild card spot if a couple things turn the right way. But
yeah,
they're going to be probably battling in the middle of the division. Maybe 500 is probably where they're going to sit. So yeah. And then you want to look at the team deeper, like we always do with the prospects. They got outfielder Garrett Mitchell, shortstop Bryce Terang, pitcher Ethan Small, and catcher Mario Feliciano. Out of that, Garrett Mitchell's the only one in the top 100. I believe he was like 50-something. Their farm system is bad.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. I mean, they're bad. They're probably bottom 5 all baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine. A couple guys recently came up, Luis Urias, I believe Corbin Burns, Castiano, Orlando Arcia. So many, a couple of these guys, Devin Williams. These are guys who were prospects recently that came up. So you could they kind of drop off your prospect list. So obviously that makes your prospect list not look so great. Mm-hmm. But their farm system's not great. So it's one of the worst.
Yeah.
So you can't even be like, all right, we'll make some moves at the deadline. You don't really have the ammo to do that. But the team is okay, though. The team, if Yelich plays like he's supposed to, and a couple guys play kind of how they're supposed to, and they get a little help, a little luck with the pitching, they can be, a contender for the wild card. But, with the playoffs being back to normal, I just don't see it.
Yeah, agreed. It's just kind of like we got them number 3. They're just kind of going to be there. Could they be a little better, a little worse? Obviously, but I mean, I think that's a good spot for them, kind of third most talented. So the next team that we should talk about is the Reds, who we both spoke quite highly of going into the playoffs last year. So let's get into them and their lineup, rotation and stuff. So their lineup consists of Jesse Winker, Nick Castellanos, Joey Votto, Eugenio Suarez, Mike Mustakas, Nick Senzel, Kyle Farmer, Tucker Barnhart, and then the pitching spot. Their rotation consists of Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle, however you say his name, Wade Miley, and Michael Lorenzen. They have some strengths here for the first time we're talking about a team here. I think they have some strengths in both the lineup and the rotation here. I mean, Sonny Gray, the way he's pitched with them, and Luis Castillo, you've got a sick 1-2 there, even with losing how Trevor Bauer pitched last year, with losing him. So you still got a sick 1-2 punch out of the rotation. The rest, Wade Miley at this point, he's okay. Michael Lorenzen's okay. He's a good 5 guy. Tyler Mahle, however you say his name, is good. I think that with him being the 3 guy, the talent definitely drops off from Luis Castillo. If I'm pretty sure Sonny Gray's the opening day starter. So So I think your top two guys, you definitely have a better top two than the last teams we talked about for sure. So right there, you're doing better. And then the lineup, I mean, you got Jesse Winker, who's got some stupid pop, and is a good leadoff guy. Nick Castellanos has really turned it on since he came over, and has been a gap to gap doubles guy, and has really hit the hell out of the ball. So he's going to be fantastic for you. Joey Votto in the 3 spot. I mean, at this point, I think he's 37. At some point, he's gonna he's got to see that he's not really a 3 hitter anymore. Could he still be? Yeah, I mean, it is Joey Votto, but at this point, I just don't see it anymore with him. He should be dropped down the lineup if this is kind of what they're thinking of going with. So Votto might even be killing him at this point. And then out of the 4 spot, you got Eugenio Suarez, who's got some unbelievable pop. We've seen that firsthand when we went to the Reds game. Seen one of the furthest balls I ever seen hit, maybe the furthest. But he's a low average guy. He's okay third baseman. But he's going to be good as your 4-man. He's going to be good as your middle of the lineup. You need home runs guy. Behind him, Mike Mustakas. I always like Mike Mustakas. He may even be considered underrated. I think that he's fantastic. He seems to be pretty consistent, although the Reds' offense last year in the playoffs just went absolutely ice cold. I feel like he is a guy that, regardless of stuff like that going on, is usually going to come through for you. Me and you both, you especially, I know you like Nick Senzel. The guy has injury problems, though, obviously. There are concerns there. If he's on the field, he's great, I think. Speedy guy, can hit, can field. So I think that if he stays on the field, you got a good, nice outfielder there. Kyle Farmer's good, kind of like we talked about with Nico Horner. Kind of going to fill in that middle of the infield there. Going to be okay. And then Tucker Barnhart's a good catcher. Maybe like a mid-tier kind of middle of the pack catcher there. He's pretty good. Not going to set the world on fire. So lineup I think is good. Like I said, the rotation just with your top 2 guys there, I think you're already better off than some of the other teams we talked about. And then out of the bullpen, you got Amir Garrett as your closer. Sean Doolittle they got, Cam Bedrosian, Lucas Sims. So the rotation, I mean the bullpen, you got a good closer, you got a good setup man in Sean Doolittle. From there, I guess you kind of figured out Cam Bedrosian, like I said, is good. Lucas Sims was projected as the closer, so that he's pretty good as well. So you got a good 7, 8, 9 there. They could figure something out definitely for sure. Then they got some depth. They got outfielder Shogo Akiyama, I believe, is pretty good. Showed some talent, if I am remembering the right player here. Catcher Tyler Stevenson is the backup, is a solid backup for Tucker Barnhart. I think that they both work well, kind of, not platooning, but I think they going back and forth between the two. I think you got a good catching core there. And then D, I don't know when he changed his name, but D Strange Gordon. He is at this point not quite the D Gordon that we saw quite a few years ago. Not quite the speed, not quite the average, not quite the electricity. I mean, he's slotted in here as a bench guy, so you've definitely got depth there in case you need someone in the middle of the infield to help out. I believe he played some outfield, so like I said, you got some depth. Lineup is good. You got some pop out of the lineup for sure. If they can stay consistent, that'd definitely help them because towards the end of the year they really fell off the cliff. And as far as their arms with the rotation of the bullpen, you got some good arms. So there's a lot to like here. I still don't think they're quite a wild card team. I really don't think they're a division contender, but I think they're closer or could potentially be closer than some of the other teams here. And I think that there's less question marks. But like I kind of said with the other teams, a lot of these middle, the Reds, Brewers, and Cubs here, I kind of think all of them kind of in the same vein. Like they're all kind of 500 average, a little above 500, a little below 500 average. So we'll see where the Reds end up. But I think that there is some things to like here out of the Cincinnati Reds. So I know we both like the Reds, and we were kind of rooting them on last year. So what are you thinking here with the Reds?
Yeah, Reds last year was definitely a letdown. But this year, they still have some talent. Sonny Gray, obviously a very good pitcher. Luis Castillo, been in trade talks for another very good pitcher and a young pitcher. Tyler Mahle, I mean, he's always a consistent, mid to bottom rotation guy. Wade Miley, another one, mid to bottom rotation guy. And Jeff Hoffman, who was a high prospect or a high draft pick for the Rockies. So now getting out of Colorado, maybe changing scenery, so maybe he can kind of step up there. Out of the bullpen, you got Amir Garrett, who's brings the fight, I guess you could say. You've seen
Sure
that.
does.
Sean Doolittle still got a little left in his arm. Michael Lorenz, he's both ways. He's a good hitter, outfielder, pitches, so he's pretty good. No Ramirez, Sal Romano. You mentioned Cameron Drosian. So their bullpen's not bad. They did trade, Iglesias, but the bullpen's not bad. Their starting rotations, especially with the first two guys, is not bad. So their pitching is definitely one of the more competitive pitching staffs in the NL, especially in the division. So that's going to go a long way. And then get into some offense. Tucker Barnhart, he's been there for a while. He's not a bad catcher. Tyler Stevenson, like you said, he's actually one of their high prospects. So good chance you see him take over that catching role more, consistently. And if he could step up and be the player they think he could be, I mean, what a big help that's going to be. Then you got Votto, which you mentioned. He's pretty much, I don't know what you're going to get at him. I mean, some power last year, which was surprising, but definitely not a 330 hitter anymore. He's probably a 270 hitter, a little bit of home runs. But if he could just kind of be more consistent, more of the player that he was, that'd go a long way. You got Mike Mustakas, who's been good. Kyle Farmer's a good, utility guy. Eugenio Suarez, like you said, crushed the ball there when we were there. He had a down year, but he was tied or second in the league in home runs 2 years ago, the last full year.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, guy can crush the ball. Jose Garcia, I believe he's got a shot at being the shortstop, young guy. You said G. Gordon. Obviously, that's not a bad pickup for them. And then you get into some outfielders, Jesse Winker, who's played well for the Reds. Nick Senzel, who was their top prospect a couple years ago, he's played well for the Reds. He does have injury concerns, but when he plays, he's very good. Shogo Akiyama, like you said, he played well for the Reds. He was one of the few guys who actually played pretty well offensively last year. Then you have Aquino. If you guys remember, he had 20 home runs in 40 games.
Yeah.
So if he can kind of cut some of the strikeouts down and get back to making contact with the ball, that'd go a long way for this Reds team as well. And then you have Nick Castiano. This is one of their best hitters on his team. So offensively, they still have some big names there. They still have a good offense, and their pitching staff still has a couple of good guys there. So the team is still relatively good. And as bad as they were last year, you got to think a lot of these guys are going to bounce back. That's why I think they're going to be second place and couldn't be an outside chance at a wild card team for at least most of the year, because a lot of these guys have to bounce back, and I think they will with a long year. But there's just a lot. There's a lot of talent still on this team,
Sure.
and they have pitching compared to these other two teams we talked about. They don't have pitching. They have pitching, so that goes a long way. So then you get into some of the prospects. They have pitcher Nick Lodolo, pitcher Hunter Green, who I think we've seen in spring training to 103.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And I believe he was a two-way player coming out of college too, right?
I'm not sure. I would assume so if he was out of college.
I think
he might be.
I think he was a little bit of a two-way player too, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
But then they have outfielder Austin Hendrick, catcher Tyler Stevenson, which you mentioned. They have a very good farm system. All those guys right there are top 100.
Oh, okay.
Two of them are pitchers. One's an outfielder. One's a catcher. It's a good spread. They have a good farm system. They have a top 10 farm system, I would say. So that's good. That gives them some ammo for trades or calling some of these guys up and making some moves, especially in the pitching category. And the team, like I said, still has talent. They still have good names. They're still relatively young. They got some good pieces here. If they could just consistently hit better than they did last year, they could definitely make a little bit of noise and be, at least, something to talk about there with the in the division and then in the wild card chase.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want the Reds to be good in this division. I like the Reds. We both like the Reds, and my dad's even a little bit of a closet Reds fan, so a lot to like, a lot to root for there. We love their stadium, so that helps a lot too. So we'll see what happens. They kind of fit in, like I said, with those other two teams where they could be in that second spot. They could be maybe even pressing for a wild card, or they could just kind of fall and be middle of the pack. But we'll see what happens with them. I will definitely, out of all, well, except for this next team, the rest of the teams, I'll be watching the Reds. the most closely. So to get into our final team here, the team we think is the most talented is the St. Louis Cardinals, who, just before I get into it, to do research for and look up notes for this, I seen a projection in which they were projected 78 wins to finish third or fourth in this division, and I think that's just absolutely insane. I don't know where in the world you could think that would happen. In my opinion, I think that this is just about as clear a favorite you have in the league for a division winner. In my opinion, I think they could be a 95 win team, upwards of that. So just to get into it, you got your leadoff guy, you got Tommy Edman, who I believe they have him pegged as a utility guy. I believe he's going to replace Colton Wong at second, if I'm not mistaken, because he kind of plays everywhere. Then you got Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, that guy, no big names there. Paul DeJong, Dylan Carlson, Yadier Molina, Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader, and then the pitching spot. The rotation consists of Jack Flaherty, Adam Wainwright, hope I'm saying his name right, Kwang Hyun Kim, Carlos Martinez, and then Daniel Ponce de Leon. So right off the bat, the two, first of all, the infield I think is fantastic. The corner infield is just about the best in baseball, straight up. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. I don't know what more you could want. Maybe Matt Olson and Matt Chapman, another corner duo. I think that's about that's your competition. Tommy Edman and Paul DeJong up the middle. I mean, I think that they are outstandingly underrated. And I think that he's going to be a good replacement technically for Colton Wong at second. It was a little bit of a loss. I think they did like Colton Wong over there. Fans liked him, and he is a great player. But I mean, I think they'll be fine with him. And the outfield, I mean, you got Dylan Carlson. He's going to be sick. Good switch hitter. I don't know. I think his numbers were a little down when he first came up last year in a little shortened stint, but I think that's not anything really to be concerned about. Behind him, you got Yadier Molina coming back. I mean, at this point, you know what you're getting out of Yadi. He's one of the best. Tyler O'Neill, if I'm not mistaken, pretty speedy guy, good outfielder, kind of give you a good average. And I think he does have some pop, if I'm not mistaken. Not like a super like he's going to give you 30 home runs or anything like that, but I think he does have some pop. And then Harrison Bader, another good outfielder. I mean, their outfield I think is could be one of the most underrated in baseball with Carlson, O'Neill, and Bader here. Not like real household names, not like an Aaron Judge or a Mike Trout or a Christian Yelich, but man, I mean, I think Dylan Carlson could be up there with becoming a household name and a big time guy for the Cardinals. And then the rotation, I mean, Jack Flaherty was, I think people forget how good Jack Flaherty was in 2019. Obviously, yeah, he had a down year last year, did not pitch, the way that we think he can. And at this point, I think I'm pretty confident he's going to be back to an ace status in this full length season. So I'm not really worried about him. Adam Wainwright's back. Adam Wainwright pitched very well, kind of getting into the upper ages here. And I think he's going to be great. Kwang Hyun Kim, again, if I'm saying that right, I'm pretty sure he had a pretty damn good year last year, and no one even said anything about it. So, I mean, if that's your three guy, I mean, that's pretty good. And then right behind we got Carlos Martinez and Daniel Ponce de Leon, two good guys to round out the rotation. I'm pretty sure Carlos Martinez not too long ago was their ace, and his nickname Tsunami. I mean, fans loved him, the team loved him. I mean, if he's your four guy, obviously he's fallen off a little bit, but golly, he's good. So right there, I mean, the lineup's fantastic, rotation's good, nothing really to worry about there. Then the bullpen, I mean, talk about names. First of all, you got Giovanni Gallegos, who may not be the biggest name in this bullpen, but what a great closer. He's very consistent. Alex Reyes throws real hard. Jordan Hicks throws real hard. So you got, your 7, 8, 9 there. And then you got Andrew Miller, who has had some issues. He hasn't been the most consistent guy, but man, I mean, he's talk about a name, and he could still really bring it, and he could still, with that side throwing he's got is fantastic. He's going to be great for them. At the bench, I think this is probably the complaint I have here. They don't have quite the depth that they could have compared to some of the other teams. Off the bench, you got Matt Carpenter, who, I mean, at this point, I don't know what you're really getting out of him. Could this be the year he finally kind of turns it on and is hot like he used to be? We're not sure yet, but if he is, that's a fantastic, infielder you got there. Catcher Andrew Neisner. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I guess, would be the backup for Yachty. I'm not sure if he's a young guy. I'm actually not too familiar with him. I'm sure you'll probably get into it. And then a backup outfielder, Lane Thomas, another guy I'm not super familiar with. Could be a young guy that they're hoping is going to come up and be good for them. I'm not really sure. So depth may be a little bit of a question. You might get into it and kind of teach me something here about these guys, but I think that if just a little bit of depth is your only question here with a good rotation, a good lineup, good bullpen, it is a lot more than these other teams can say. And I don't quite know why this team is not getting the credit that they do by baseball analysts and critics. I mean, 78 wins I saw in that one. How could you look at this team and think that? It's insane to me. I really do think this Cardinal team is going to run away with the division just about. I think that they are going to have a pretty easy time getting into the playoffs, and I think that they could potentially do some damage in the playoffs. I mean, there's some stiff competition in the NL, and obviously then if the AL if they make it that far, but there's a lot to like here. So I know we both talk highly of the Cardinals. So what are you kind of thinking with this Cardinal team here?
Yeah, I mean this team is built top to bottom. Start with the rotation: Jack Flaherty, Miles Mikolas, Adam Wainwright, Carlos Martinez, Kwang Hung Kim, Alex Reyes, Daniel Ponce de Leon. Those are some really good starting pitchers. Flaherty, ace. Mikolas is a solid 2-man. Wainwright's like your perfect 3-man. He still has flashbacks where he's the ace, Wainwright. And then he also struggles a little bit because he's older. Then you have Carlos Martinez, a former ace, who has the stuff to be back, that good, or be in the bullpen if needed. Alex Reyes was a top prospect years ago. If he can stop getting injured, can he show up and be the pitcher that he's supposed to be? If that's the case, it's another guy that could be an ace or in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Ponce de Leon was a higher prospect, and then Kwang Hum Kim last year, I believe, until his last start or two in the year, I think he didn't go up 3 or more runs the whole year until his last start or two. So they have great starting pitching with some great potential to be even better, or some of these guys can go into the bullpen and strengthen the bullpen.
Yeah.
And then talking to the bullpen, you got John Gant, who's pitched very well for them. Andrew Miller has been good for them. Not great, but been good. Giovanni Gallegos has been fantastic. He's probably their best reliever. Then you get guys like Jordan Hicks, who throws 105 miles per hour. He's back this year. That's going to help them a lot. Tyler Webb, Ryan Helsley. So their bullpen's pretty good, especially if, probably 1 or 2 of these starters are going to have to be in the bullpen as well.
Yep.
So their pitching staff as a whole is very good, very strong, and deep, which is what you need. And then you get into some of their position players. You get Yachty, arguably one of the best catchers of all time. On my list, I think I had him, second or third, my all-time list. Andrew Kanizer, he's a younger backup catcher, not bad. Paul Goldschmidt, come on, what do you got to say with him? Tommy Edman, I love Tommy Edman. He's a versatile utility guy who just hits everywhere he goes and just plays every position and just does everything good, exactly what you want. Arenado, what's he, top 2 third basemen in all baseball. And like you said, with him and Goldschmidt, I mean that's probably one of the best, corner duos you could possibly have, and 2 of the top 10 position players in all baseball.
Probably, yeah.
And then you got Paul DeJong, is just no one talks about, even though he's, I believe, second or third ranked, the highest defensive shortstop. Yes, his average is down a little bit. His average could be higher. Power-wise, he's fantastic. He is a good hitter. His average is going to come up, but defensively, he's the top 2 or 3 defensive shortstops in all baseball by the metrics. And then Matt Carpenter, who's just a guy who, if he's going to be playing more of a utility backup role, I mean he's even though he struggled, that's still great for him and great for the team. So their infield is one of the best infielders in baseball, and defensively they're probably arguably the best defensive infield in baseball and one of the better ones we've seen in the last few years. Then you go to the outfield, which is where they're young and crazy. Tyler O'Neill, a guy who has pretty much all tools. He's outside champ. I mean, I believe it was Ryan Spader. I think I seen him tweeting about it. He put a bet on for Tyler O'Neill to lead the league in home runs.
Wow.
It was like 50,000 to 1 odds or something like that. But the guy's got serious power. He's got like 5 this year in spring training already. or 4 or something like that. Then you got Dylan Carlson, was one of the top prospects in baseball, and it still is a prospect technically. He's fantastic. He's going to be unbelievable. He's a switch hitter. He's going to be a great hitter. He's got so much talent. He's going to be a middle of the order guy for a long time.
Yeah.
Harrison Bader, defensively, you don't really get too much better defensively than Harrison Bader. If he can, and he's got some power. If he can raise his average from 200 to 220, if he can raise it to 240, 250 with that defense, that's all you can ask for.
Sure.
And then, like you said, Lane Thomas, who is, I believe, a relatively young guy. He played pretty well for them last year, in the, when they needed him. So the depth isn't bad. Their outfield is very young, but it's definitely their strength. Is a not their strength of the team, but it's very young, and could be a lot better than maybe people think, especially with Dylan Carlson, Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader. They're all very young. So to say that their outfield's their weakness it's not the right word for it. You just don't know exactly what you're going to get out of them, but the potential's off the charts. Especially, I'm telling you, Dylan Carlson, he's going to be one of the best hitters in baseball for a long time, especially as a switch hitter. And then that fan base, that stadium, they're going to love this team.
Definitely.
They're going to love them. They're going to love that team. So it's going to be exciting. It's an exciting team. I think there's a good chance this team's in the World Series this year.
I think
with the depth at pitching, the speed and potential in the outfield, and the great defense in the infield and the outfield, it's exactly what you want. You want good pitching, depth at pitching, and good defense. They have it, and you never count this team out, this franchise out. Even when they don't have a great team, you don't ever count them out.
Mm-hmm.
So when they have a good team, you can't count them out at all. So I think this is a great team. I think you can easily see them in the NLCS, and I think you can easily see them in the World Series this year. They're going to be hard to beat. Very hard to beat. And then to go into some prospects, like I said, Dylan Carlson, he's like a top 10 prospect in baseball. Then you have third baseman Nolan Gorman. Oddly enough, they have 2 third basemen named Nolan in this team.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be very good. Then you have a pitcher I really like for them, Matt Liberatore. He's got his curveball's it drops like 4 feet. Big lefty. You could see him in the majors this year. Another guy who could help their pitching. He's going to be really good too. I think he's got a really good shot at being I kind of think I kind of put him on the level that I think AJ Puck could be at.
Oh, okay.
Then you have catcher Ivan Herrera, which if you got Yadi Molina, you have another really good catcher coming up. Yadi's going to just help that guy as much as, that's just going to be great for them.
Oh, yeah.
So they have a very good farm system overall. They have definitely, I would say, top 10 farm system in baseball for sure. And they have a great team. There's just talent at every position. They're all going to fit well. Arenado's going to fit right in, just wants to win. Goldschmidt just fit right in. He was a perfect St. Louis player. Everybody here just fits that Cardinal mold. This team is really, really good. I think they're winning the division for sure with ease. I mean, worst case, they're a wild card team, but they're like the Braves. So if they wake a wild card team, whoever they face, they're just like, that's just a bad draw.
Yeah.
But they're
Sure.
definitely going to win this division. I think they're definitely deep in the playoffs. I think you're going to see them really NLCS and possibly in the World Series. This team is just really, really good, and I'm excited to watch them.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, when we were kind of discussing who we think could be division winners and kind of how the divisions are shaping up, I mean, I'm pretty sure we were just like, yeah, the Cardinals got the Central, so let's, I mean, it was like that. I mean, I don't, like I said, with some of these projections, I don't see where these baseball writers are getting their stats from or their ideas from. I think that because they maybe consider the division so muddy and kind of technically it's up for grabs to a lot of people. I think that people want to be a little, go off the beaten path, maybe say, oh, the Cubs got it this year, all the Brewers got it, or but I think it's just, to me and you, I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion that the Cardinals just have the most talent up and down. They got the lineup, they got the rotation, they got the bullpen,
Yeah. Well, people just they love talking with the Brewers. They always think the Brewers are so very good. I don't see it. I don't see the pitching. I said it 2 years ago when they made the playoffs. I was like, good for them. They made the playoffs. But to think that they're really a dominant team is really just not smart. And people still love the Cubs. People still ride that window shut. That team's dead. That team might be a playoff team, but there's just no World Series hope. And the franchise doesn't even want to spend money. That's why they made some of these moves. Yeah. So, to think that if the Cardinals are going to have 78 wins, then the Pirates are having 7 this year.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's a better chance the Pirates. I think there's a better chance that, 2 teams in this division have 100 losses than the Cardinals have 78 wins.
Yeah, that's just insane. It's an insane number.
Yeah, it's just stupid. That's stupid. I think the Cardinals are going to have 90, 95, 100 wins. And there's 4 teams that you got to worry about in the NL. It's Cardinals, Braves, and 2 teams we're going to talk about next week, Padres and Dodgers. That's pretty much your NL.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in my head, and even when we talked about it, we kind of already knew. We were like, all right, well, this team's winning the division, this team's winning the division, this team's winning the division, and here's probably your 2 wildcard teams, bang, done. I mean, I feel like that's just kind of how the NL's shaking out, and the Cardinals just seem to be right up there with potentially the Braves, and obviously we'll get, like you said, we'll get into it next week. The Padres and the Dodgers are very good. So.
And then you have a dark horse team in the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're probably just about, unless things really go Mets cataclysmic, like they can. I think you're probably looking at a wild card team there. So, I mean, not to spoil what we're kind of thinking with the next division, but I mean, it's kind of, to me, I think it's for a lot of baseball fans a foregone conclusion who your top 2 teams are next, in the West.
Yeah. And what the Cardinals, I think the Cardinals really are better set up than even the Braves. And I say that just because their starting pitching has more depth, more names in it, like more consistency. Braves are just really young, so they have that high potential, kind of like the Cardinals outfield here. But, the Cardinals lineup is just as good as anybody's.
Yeah.
And their defense is just as good as anybody's. And their pitching is just as good. Starting pitching is just as good as anybody's. And their bullpen's probably a lot better than most teams, especially like the Braves, more middling bullpen. Cardinals bullpen's probably top 5 in the NL and possibly top 5 in baseball this year. This team's really good, and discredit them, give them nothing. Do what everyone's done with Brady for 20 years. Just do it, because the instant you doubt them, it's the instant you'll see them at the end.
Yeah, they're a team that tends to do that too, so definitely right on there. But I mean, that's kind of all I got on this division. Just to recap, Pirates, we kind of know where they're at. The middle 3 teams are kind of, they're maybe even interchangeable, honestly, if you're kind of making rankings. Yeah, and I think I could see where you say, well, maybe the Cardinals are only a 90-win team, or maybe they're not quite as good, but I mean, without spoiling anything, because in 2 weeks we'll get to our actual projections, but I kind of see them as a mid-90-win team. I think that's just how it is. So
yeah, for sure, at least.
Yeah, so that's like I said, that's all I got on this division. What if you got anything, any notes, anything that you didn't mention about some of the other teams?
No, that's pretty much it. It's just not your stereotypical division. You got your bottom dweller, you got your really good top team. In the middle is just you don't think there's a bunch of competition to the division leader, but you never really know. It's just a lot of question marks.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
So, but anyway, to kind of wrap up the episode, as we always do the trivia question. And this week's trivia question is, who won the first ever home run derby? Pretty simple question. I think a lot of people will probably know the answer to this one. But the first home run derby winner was in 1985 at the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome, which was Minnesota. And it was by Reds' Dave Parker, which ties right into this week's episode. He won it with 6 home runs, and there was 4 players tied for second, including Jim Rice, Carlton Fisk, Eddie Murray, gotta love Eddie Murray, and another one that ties into this division, Ryan Sandberg. They all had 5 home runs that year. So I wanted to do this one because it ties essentially 2 teams from the NL Central into the trivia question.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was the next year. Actually, I think there might have been a year off where they didn't have the home run derby or something happened. But
This was in Cincinnati. I think it was like 3-4 years later. They had a rain out.
yeah, I remember looking through the winners and seeing like a blank spot. So I'm pretty sure though, shortly after that, Ryan Sandberg won it as well. So that kind of ties in as well. He's like one of the first 3 or 4 winners or something.
Yeah, there was at Wrigley. I think he won with 1 home run or 2 home runs.
Yeah, it was like 2 or something. Yeah, he just barely hit any out. It must have been, compared to what we see today, it must have been like, oh my God.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, it's a good one. The home run derby has definitely changed quite a bit since then. And I think it's probably, in my opinion, and maybe in your opinion too, I think we both like it, that I think it's changed for the better. I'm excited. We didn't get a home run derby and all-star game last year, so that's always a good time of the year as well. We'll have it the middle of the year now.
Yeah, especially because I really think baseball has the best all-star weekend or all-star break. I'm not going to go into too much, but football, obviously, they're in a tough spot because you can't really have an exhibition game in a sport like that. But they could definitely do some mid-season all-star stuff like that. They just kind of leave out. Hockey's isn't bad. I just don't think hockey's gets enough attention. It's just how it is. And basketball with the dunk contest, that kind of has been lacking for years. And then the all-star game, there's just no competition. While baseball, I think, really competes. I mean, they lost the idea of the NL and the AL. The winner has the home field advantage, but you can't really play. You can't really not try in baseball.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Compared to defense in basketball, you just don't play defense when you're all-star game. But like baseball, what are you just not gonna play defense? Baseball, you're just not gonna catch a fly ball.
Yeah, that's true.
You can change the way you pitch, maybe a little bit, or change the way that you attack a pitcher. But then you can put yourself in a slump. So I think baseball has the best all-star setup. So I'm excited to have that back this year. So just talking about the home run derby and stuff is exciting.
Yeah, I agree too. I think that not to belabor the point, but I do think that basketball probably has the next best. I think, like you said, I think the dunk contest has kind of lacked the star power like it used to. There's some names in the most recent. I'm not a huge basketball guy, so I may be ignorant to some of the guys, but I see some of the names. I'm like literally like who? I'm like, I mean, if you're a basketball fan, obviously, I'm sure you know these guys, but for someone like an outsider looking in, if you're just a casual fan, I'm sure you're just like, who's that? I mean, he's big, but whatever.
Yeah, it's not LeBron James or Anthony Davis or someone, where you're like, wow, all right, or Kevin Durant, where you're like, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Baseball's probably 1, basketball's probably 2, and hockey's probably 3.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be great. We're going to have that in July. Again, it was, there was a lot wrong with last season, obviously, and a lot wrong with the world, but to have the little things like that back is nice because they do make a difference. And it's during that week too is the only time when there's no sports on, right? Isn't that right? After the All-Star game in baseball, it's like the only 3 days or 2 days when there's no sports going on, or the major 4 sports.
Yeah, I believe it's That's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, I'm excited for this year. And one quick note, you even seen Texas Rangers with their brand new stadium. No surprise, in Texas with their new rules. They're opening at 100% capacity to start the season with everyone attending to need to wear a mask, and that's fantastic to see and hear. So
I believe a solid a quarter to third. I'm sure the number's going up by the day, but the last time I saw it was a quarter to 30% of their whole population is vaccinated. So it's encouraging to start seeing things start to get a little bit back here. So yeah, I mean, you can't help but be enthused about stuff like that. So all right, yeah, that's kind of all I got. We just recorded the other episode not too long ago, so I don't know if there's anything really. We brought it up last episode. Spring training's going on. We're 2 episodes away here from having our first 2 to 3 episodes away from having our first week of the season episode, and it's going to be great. Can't wait for the season to start.
Yeah, and like we said last week, we had some difficulties, so we posted the NL East will come out either Tuesday of this week or Wednesday of this week, and then this episode being posted on normal time on Thursday. So if you see this one and you're like, where's the NL East? Go back and look. It'll probably be posted on the same week, either Tuesday or Wednesday. So, but we should be all caught up after this. and be back on the same schedule with hopefully no technical difficulties.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was just one episode we had to worry about. This is kind of still a normal schedule. It's just we're doing it through Skype, so everything should be back soon. So we're good. We're thankful for that. So unless you have anything last other than that you want to bring up or finish with, that's all I kind of got.
No, that's it. I mean, the college tournament's starting, so go Michigan. But
yeah, number one.
But yeah. But other than that, and fantasy baseball's coming, so I'm just excited for everything to start up.
Yeah, me too. All right, well then, thank you guys for listening. You can catch this podcast every week on Google Podcasts as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can listen to this podcast on our regularly updated YouTube channel as well as our website screwball.podbean.com. You can follow me on Twitter at @RealMikeLepre. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lepre.
You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at FW10.
You can follow our official Screwball Twitter at ScrewballPod. You can follow our official Screwball Facebook at ScrewballPod. No E in Screw. And that's it from us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Take care.